On today's Locked On NBA Game Night podcast, what are the most interesting teams to follow along with this offseason? What can we learn from the NBA Finals? And we're going to play buy or sell, including the Lonzo Ball trade this afternoon.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Let's get it going on the Locked On NBA Game Night podcast. I'm Ryland, Stiles, host of Locked On Thunder. That's Gavin, Schall, host of Locked On Knicks. We're here every Saturday night breaking down what's been happening around the NBA, even throughout the offseason on game night. We're going to have games next Saturday, though, because we're going to have Summer League action with the Salt Lake City Summer League. The California Classic perhaps will be playing, but for sure the Salt Lake City Summer League, which the Thunder will be a part of. And Gavin, speaking of the Thunder, NBA champs OKC Thunder taking on the Pacers, going to 7, getting the win in Game 7. And every single year after the finals, two things are certain. Number one, people write about the winner as if they're never going to lose again. And number two, it's a copycat league. Teams try to figure out what you can learn from an NBA Finals that just unfolded. Was there anything from your standpoint that jumped out at you of what teams should be trying to take from the Thunder or the Pacers?
First of all, Ryland, congratulations. Great season on your part. Deserving champion. It was SGA, it was Chet, it was J-Dub, and then I think it was you slotting just ahead of Lou Dort on the scale of importance. Throw Royce Young in there, legacy Thunder media, but I think you guys deserve a lot of credit. So we can go broader and we can talk about the Thunder's future. We can talk about the depth. I've talked a lot about this over the last few years on the Locked On Knicks podcast. To me, like, the skeleton key of modern basketball is the skilled stretch five that can protect the rim. And like, if you really want to just narrow the unicorn criteria a little bit further, can also switch on the perimeter. And I always look at, all right, what teams have that and what does that unlock for them? And we saw two of those guys in the NBA Finals, right? Chet Holmgren, obviously, he's the next guy up in that category, along with Victor Wembanyama, and Miles Turner is kind of the OG. I was saying, all right, who else in the league actually checks those boxes? And it's those three guys, and I think it's a healthy version of Kristaps Porzingis, which is interesting because obviously the Spurs are still sort of rounding out their roster, but you have Indiana in the finals, you have Oklahoma City in the finals, and it most likely would have been Boston, Indiana in the Eastern Conference Finals if Kristaps Porzingis was 100% healthy, with apologies to my Knicks. Guys who are close to fitting into those categories, you could say Brook Lopez in his prime was certainly there. Joel Embiid, fully healthy. I don't know if that version of him still exists on the defensive end of the floor, but nominally he would be in that category. Jaren Jackson Jr., probably not a good enough rebounder to be a full-time five, but I really zero in on those four guys, if you want to throw Wemby in there. And just what that unlocks, because it lets you play five out without sacrificing defense. And we saw Oklahoma City and Indiana more broadly were built around the idea of five guys who could pass, dribble, shoot, and at the very least hold their own on the defensive end of the floor. But that's only tenable, Ryland, if you have that rim protector, if you have a real threat from three. And even Miles Turner was pushed on that to some extent, because at times Oklahoma City dared him to shoot. He couldn't totally make them pay. Chet is obviously still rounding out his shot. But to me, that is sort of the ultimate separator between the good and the great in the NBA, just because it opens up the rest of your lineup.
Yeah, I completely agree with just the spacing aspect of it, the defensive aspect of it. This was an NBA Finals that got really defensive. Like whenever each team won a game this series that went 7, it was largely because of what they were able to do to the other offense, especially in the half court, whether it be turnovers, whether it be bad possessions, and they ended up grinding out some wins. It was very physical. In the finals, you got to have that toughness. But I think that, when you look at the journey of both teams, someone had to win, someone had to lose this finals. The Thunder end up winning it. But both of them share a common story with their depth of the Thunder, for example, do not reach the finals without being able to go to J. Will, the Arkansas big man's second-round pick, to help them stop Nikola Jokic. Obviously, you never take Jokic completely out of a game, but the Thunder fared in a playoff series better than anybody had against Jokic because they had the depth to put J. Will on him and trusted J. Will on him. And then also go Caruso, go Hartenstein, go Chet in game one. Like they threw so many different looks at him that you can only do that if you have a deep rotation that can throw those different pitches if you're the head coach. And that also leads into, like, Aaron Wiggins was offensively great against Memphis to get you a sweep in round one, which preserves some of your, kind of energy and bodies for round two, etc. And then you saw in the West Finals, like, Kenrich Williams made an appearance after not playing at all the entire playoffs until the West Finals. And they go away from double bigs, even though they start them every game of that 5-game series. They didn't play starting minutes with two bigs. They mainly played with one big. So again, another change that is only possible if you trust your depth, if you get your depth up to speed and develop it throughout the regular season, not only this year, but in previous years as well, and grow together as an organization. And then you see Indiana go on this miracle run. And how many times did you look up and, yeah, Therese Halliburton had the big moment, and he's awesome, and he's, of course, the head of the snake. You can't do what these two teams did without Halliburton, without SGA. But there was also some role players hitting big-time shots for Indiana. Like, you look at the Ben Shepherd game. You look at how the Pacers were able to have Nesmith and Nembhard play valuable roles as starters on this team. They got a Thomas Bryant game from three. They went to Tony Bradley at times. Like, they went into their rotation, and I think that it's a bygone era to think that you can just roll into the playoffs and have your 7 best guys and run through a 3-month marathon. I think that the game is too physical. It's too sped up. It's too different. Like the archetype of teams that you see in that 3-month marathon are way different game to game and round to round. You can't just have a 7-man rotation and trust 6 of them to get you a win.
I mean, just someone like TJ McConnell's ability right after that injury, that game should be over, and he came out and, like, against arguably the best defense in modern NBA history, he's like, nah, I'm gonna cook them. And like Obi Toppin, who's a castaway from another conference finals team in the Knicks, like, he changes that series at different times in game 1 and game 3. Like, I think it's a fantastic point by you. My only other takeaway is I'm so curious, like, what is the perspective on Oklahoma City? And maybe that's a stupid question. Maybe it's obvious, because in some ways, like, they show some real cracks. I think people who are out there who believe the Pacers win if Halliburton, like, plays, like, I don't know. I think it's a coin toss, but it was plausible that Indiana could have beaten them. And yet, like, second youngest team to, I think, make the finals ever with the 77 Blazers, at least in modern NBA history. And it feels like this is the worst they're going to be over the next few years, obviously pending health. But, like, why would Chet not get better? Why would J-Dub not get better? Why would SGA not continue to get better over the next few years? Like, a million draft picks, and the fact that, like, Sam Presti, like, outside of using Josh Giddey and, like, cap space to bring in Hartenstein and Caruso, like, keeps the cupboard dry, right? And doesn't make that all-in move, quote unquote, for Cam Johnson or someone like Trey Murphy. They really wanted to be super all-in, and they can still do that. They still have that flexibility. They still have all the rookies that are coming down the pipeline in Topic and I'm sorry if I mispronounced his name, and Thomas Sober. Like, it is, like, I think it's scary for the rest of the league. You can speak on that better than I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you hit the nail on the head of just they are going to get better, and they frankly have to get better. Like, this is not the actualized version of OKC, and yet they're one championship in to whatever this core ends up doing. I think that you look at it, and of course, pending health, like you mentioned, but their half-court offense cannot be that bad again. And you don't imagine it to be that bad again. They have a lot of capable shooters. They don't have a lot of consistently great shooters, and they all went cold at the exact same time in the playoffs. They dug in defensively, and it helped them overcome that. And they allowed them to get on fast breaks where they didn't have to necessarily worry about that poor half-court offense a ton. But whenever Indiana limited turnovers and made them worry about it, that was their toughest series outside of playing the best player in the world, Nikola Jokic. So, like, they're going to have to get better in those areas before you even mention Chet Holmgren, who did what he did this playoffs a few months removed from a broken hip that he suffered on November 10th. Like, this guy broke his hip and was bedridden on November 10th. And he came in and played elite defense throughout the entire playoffs that you don't win without his defense, like you talked about to start the show. And then, yeah, offensively, he left a lot to be desired in the finals. And you look at what he looked like before that hip injury on November 10th, and it was a very small sample size. I will grant you that. It was 10 games. But before that hip injury, he looked like a guy who could score off the catch and be a 3-level option for OKC. He did not look like that guy in the finals, and so you imagine that's going to get better. To your point, J-Dub got worlds better from the game 1 of the NBA playoffs to game 7 of the NBA finals. So I just think that this team is going to continue to tick up, and they have to continue to tick up just with how young they are and the talent and work ethic of this group. Now, obviously, other teams are going to get better too. Other teams are going to make moves as well. Nobody's going to sit idly by, but the idea that you can kind of just figure out OKC is what you struggle with and struggle to grapple with if you're in Bricktown or observing how this team is built, because that defense proved you that it traveled. It was a historically great defense in the regular season. They only won this championship because of their defense. You cannot shoot that way that they did all playoffs long and win the finals without leaning on a historically great defense that did enough to get them 16 wins in their first ever championship. So that is a big takeaway from this finals is this is likely the worst version we're going to see. But as you saw with the first Thunder run, people treat that picture in Miami as if it was like Marcus Dupree and the best that never was. In reality, they
Thanks for shout out, Ryland. That was cool.
I had to throw it in there as an OU fan for you. But they treat that run as if it was the best that ever was. And in reality, they went to 4 Western Conference Finals and they were on the brink of eliminating the Warriors up 3-1, and they collapsed and they suffered injuries along the way as well with Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Serge Ibaka, all getting hurt. So that was a sustained 9-year run where you had a chance to win a title every year, and for whatever reason didn't do it because guess what? Very hard to win a title. So I'm not going to guarantee any more championships than this one that they've already won, but they do have the inside lane to getting back to this spot around the NBA in the midst of a parity era. Now, coming up, let's talk about the offseason. It's here. The draft's over with. Free agency opens Monday. Who are you keeping an eye on in that time? But first, I want to say right now, but good friends over at Skims, go check out Skims today because Skims is awesome, and I love Skims. I think that it's great. When I found out that Skims were making underwear for men, I was intrigued. Then they sent us some, and I was impressed. I've heard so much about their quality from friends and family that when I gave it a try, it lived up to the hype. And if you have ever had issues with underwear, fit, comfort, style, they blend all those things perfectly at Skims. Go check it out today because they've changed the game with their men's line, whether you like boxer briefs or just classic briefs, or you like a stretchy fabric or a cotton fabric, they have it all for you at Skims right now. Go shop Skims Men at skims.com. Let them know we sent you whenever you place your order, select podcast in the survey box and hit our show in the drop-down menu that follows at skims.com. Check them out today because it's perfect underwear that you're going to love to wear. We're back on the Locked On NBA Game Night podcast, talking about the NBA at large with Gavin, Schall, host of Locked On Knicks. I'm Ryland, Stiles, host of Locked On Thunder. For your second listen, go check out Locked On Knicks because they are one of the more interesting teams to me this offseason. Gavin, who are you most following this offseason?
All right, so Ryland, I'm going to turn this question around on you because I wanted to play a little game, and also because I'm incredibly indecisive as a person, and I couldn't narrow it down. All right, so 3 categories of teams. Limbo teams / what are they doing is the first category. Second category is contenders without quite enough. Third category is good teams on the rise. We'll start off with limbo. I was able to decide that much. I'll throw the teams out there. Tell me which one you want to talk about first. I got the Pelicans, the Heat, the Raptors, the Sixers, the Kings, and the Suns.
Man, I want to go Raptors here.
All right. I think them and New Orleans, which is crazy in a world where Phoenix exists, are probably the 2 teams where I'm like, what are they doing? What are you thinking? Masai Ujiri out, like the guy who like orchestrated like the one stretch of like, I don't even want to say competency. Like they won an NBA championship. Like Zach Lowe talked about in his podcast today, like one of the most respected organizations in the league. The last few years, they have pretty much been rudderless. The trades to send out Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby that were supposed to provide some kind of clarity did not. I think they make absolutely no sense as a team right now. Like RJ, Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram. I think just for the sake of the sanity of our friend Sean Woodley, who hosts Locked On Raptors, should probably never see the court at the same time. Just like 3 shoot first forwards, only one of which, Brandon Ingram, is like a competent quote unquote shooter. Rumors that they're shopping RJ, rumors that they're shopping Emmanuel Quickly. They draft Colin Murray Boyles, who I'm sure, like me, you're a big fan of, but doesn't totally make sense on a team that seems to desperately need shooting. And right at the start of free agency, or a few days before, again, they fire the greatest executive in team history. What's the plan here, Ryland?
I think that you've nailed the tier for the Toronto Raptors because I don't know what the plan is. And, I don't know what the inner workings were, but it is such odd timing in terms of optics to fire a guy after the NBA draft. You let him in the war room. You let him have influence at all in what was happening on the last 2 days of the draft and make that pick, which was a high lottery pick. For what reason exactly? If you're just going to fire him for a team that has been out of it since the play-in, like since that range of time, they didn't even make the end of the year, so they've had a long runway here since April to figure all this out, and to do it now seems odd. And the trade for Brandon Ingram seemed odd at the time, and I just don't know what they're trying to accomplish, and they're going to have to figure it out here on Monday as free agency opens up, which opens up, of course, the larger transactional window in the NBA.
Yeah, they're completely mystifying. Allow me one more team before we move on.
Sure.
The New Orleans Pelicans, I think, are the other just completely mystifying team in there. That you have to start with them trading away their 2026 first round pick, totally unprotected, which for reasons entirely within their control puts them under just an incredible amount of pressure to, at the very least, make the play-in. Ideally, given what happened to the Mavericks this year, you avoid the lottery entirely and you don't risk giving up a top 3 pick and seemingly the most loaded top 3 we've had in, I didn't go back and look, but I would assume about a decade. Like it is with AJ Dibansa, Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer. It is an insane top 3 next year. Man, God bless the Pelicans fans if that pick ends up in the top 3. And again, just like, same question with Joel Embiid in Philly. Like, are we really going to do this another year with Zion Williamson, where it's like, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Obviously facing legal issues as well now. Even if he does play, I don't expect this team to be very good. They were 29th in defensive rating last year, Ryland. I don't really see a world where they're any better. Starting lineup on paper would be Jordan Poole, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, Yves Missi, which is like potentially a very fun offensive group. I actually do like turning CJ McCollum into Poole. I think Poole had an underrated season last year. I think he takes too much crap. He's a fun, exciting player. Trey Murphy is someone who you could see making an all-star team this year, maybe with like another leap, even a run at like third team All-NBA. Herb Jones is awesome. Zion, when he's on the court, obviously is like just flat out one of the most talented guys in the game. The depth is not quite what it was in past years because of all the trades. Weird team. We don't know when DeJounte Murray's coming back. I have no clue what the plan is there.
I mean, I don't know what their plan is, especially in the West. How do you make up ground whenever you have a DeJounte Murray injury that will of course have next season on ice for him? When you have Zion, who is not going to be playing, even if he does play, a healthy season for him is not 82 games. A healthy season for him is somewhere in the ballpark of 65 if you think everything went perfectly and you wanted to manage him. And I just think that you hit the nail on the head too of the draft pick that you let up. You have a double odd, right, chance to get one of these top prospects in a loaded 2026 NBA draft, because what happens if, knock on wood, Giannis for whatever reason is not playing for the Bucks? Like if he gets traded, which I don't think will happen, but if he has to sit out for the second half of the season because you know what, even in the wide open East, we're not really competitive. You've got something lingering with your, let's call it your pinky finger, right? And let's just sit them down like that. That's a huge asset. And then, like we said in the West, they could try their absolute hardest and not pull any tanking levers and just not be good enough in New Orleans to where their pick is incredibly high in this draft. And I just don't think that the trade was worth it. And I don't really know what their plan was to try to attack this season. To me, it was like a offseason to this point of a team that's in the East. Of just like, let's just try it. Why not? It's like wide open, and the West is anything but wide open.
Yeah, you don't do that in the West. All right, let's quickly, because we're limited on time, move on to our next category: contenders without quite enough. Denver, LA, Golden State, Milwaukee. Which of those teams do you want to talk about?
I'm going to say Milwaukee, and I think that's low hanging fruit, but I still think it's Milwaukee.
Okay. All right. So obvious Giannis drama, obvious. A lot of noise that Brook Lopez is potentially gone. Kevin Porter Jr., who became a, unfortunately, essential piece for them down the stretch of last season. He declined his option. He's at least going to test the market. Bobby Portis has a $13 million option, and very similar to New Orleans, like, you don't have your own pick. Like, there was an incredible amount of pressure to be competitive. It seems very much that, like, Giannis does not want to leave, but if he's put into a corner, he will ultimately go. And it might be best for Milwaukee that just happens, but assuming that they want to, like, keep, like, knocking their head against the wall and seeing how open the East is, and they want to, like, I don't know, maybe Dame comes back with 5 games left in the season and we make a miraculous run. I don't really see the avenues for meaningfully improving this team.
I don't either, and I think that it's going to be difficult for them to improve, but also for them to live with the reality of next season. Even if Giannis is in your uniform from now until April, especially around February, it's like, well, Giannis is monitoring the situation. Giannis wants to see what this team can do. And the reality is, Giannis, they can't do anything, Giannis. Like, they just are so hamstrung with not having any assets that, like, if that's what you're waiting on, then you might as well demand out right now. And the flip side of that is, that's probably just NBA insiders putting words into Giannis's camp's mouths, and it's unfair to them, but it's still going to be a story no matter what you say or what you do, that you're going to have to live with as a team who obviously knows that they don't have quite enough pieces outside of one of the best players in the world to try to figure this out with the Damian Lillard injury and, of course, the limited assets. So I do think that, for better or worse, like, no matter what the reality is, what will end up becoming the reality is that the story will not go away no matter what happens. And that's tough to play through. It's tough to kind of block out as the season gets deeper. And, you have 2 different benchmarks in season. That December, 13th date, where the contracts become tradable, which is kind of the official kickoff the trade season. Then right around the trade deadline, which is whenever you're trying to gather yourself of where do you stand in the East? Where do you stand as an organization? It's just going to be a lot of noise, a lot of distractions, and I don't see what they can do to avoid it. And that's going to be where they might hit their doom. And I also think, coming up, let's talk Denver. Let's keep this story going and talk Denver, because they would have been my second choice of this tier, and they're in a similar spot. But first, I want to say right now, my good friends over at Game Time. Go download the Game Time app today and find them, because they're awesome. And what I think is best with Game Time is their last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed, because especially if you're in a baseball city right now, whether it's minor league or major league, the ballpark's right around the corner, and sometimes plans don't materialize on a summer night. And the best thing for you to do is just pop into a baseball game, and that's where you find Game Time at its best, because Game Time has the lowest prices on last-minute tickets, so you don't have to make these well thought out and well executed plans. You just got to decide at a moment's notice to go to a baseball game and get in on the action at Game Time with their exclusive zone deals. It's the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, and of course here at Locked On NBA as well. So make sure you go download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code Locked On NBA. That's $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create your account, redeem code LOCKONNBA for $20 off. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Go download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. We're back on the Locked On NBA Game Night podcast. We're talking NBA, we're talking storylines, and we're talking about the most interesting teams to watch this offseason. Go check out Locked On Nuggets, because that's the team we're talking right now. And Gavin, I think that we can just repeat the same conversation we had about Milwaukee. It was so odd to me to see their executives talking about trading Giannis unprovoked in their press conference a few days ago.
Jokic, you mean? Yeah.
Yes, Jokic. Sorry. What do you find so interesting, about Denver and kind of where they stand heading into the summer?
Yeah, so I think I put them in a different category than Milwaukee, because I think I was being a little bit generous to our friends over at Locked On Bucks, putting them in the contenders category, and maybe they're a little bit closer to the weird limbo category. I think the Nuggets proved to be legitimate contenders, right? Even though it was a blowout, nominally a game away from beating the Thunder, and maybe who knows? I mean, the Timberwolves deserve respect against them, obviously, in a theoretical series, but like maybe a game away from winning another NBA championship, and that's with Michael Porter Jr. playing with one arm, and Aaron Gordon like playing through a torn hamstring. They very obviously need, at the very least, one more guy, considering that Russell Westbrook seems to be out the door. Ideally, they would have two more guys. Some of the mistakes of Calvin Booth ghost pass will probably prevent that from happening. They do have like that low tier mid-level exception available to them, and the opportunity to bring in a player that comes with it. I do think you saw enough from Julian Strawther that you could bet on a little bit of further development there, and maybe he's that seventh guy for you. You need to find a solid sixth guy. I don't really know who that is. I don't think they quite have Ty Jerome money. He would be really ideal for that team with what they have. I don't think they have enough money to get into that conversation. But if they're just healthy and you get someone who can like roughly bring you what Russell Westbrook did, or maybe just like a more consistent, less highs, but also less lows version of that, like they're in the mix because Jokic is just that good. Jamal Murray is just that good. And I think the synergy of their top four is just that good.
I completely agree. It just, I find them so interesting because what are those moves on the margins? And that's like the double-edged sword. If you're Denver, that's the good news and the bad news. Is like the good news is Jokic is so awesome that he took this Thunder team to the brink by himself. When you look at it, they were on the verge of elimination in the second round, the eventual champions, whenever you had Michael Porter Jr., who was not healthy, Jamal Murray, who was battling a sickness, and then Aaron Gordon, who was battling a quad injury in Game 7 and was obviously less effective because of the injury, even though he gutted it out and was a complete warrior. And you tip your cap to Mr. Nugget every time for battling through that injury, but it just limited him in Game 7. And they almost pulled it off. I mean, they got blown out in Game 7, which kind of took the shine off of how close they were to eliminating OKC. So they just need to get marginally better. But with the new CBA and the limitations upon it, you mentioned some guys who of yesteryear and the old CBA we'd think of as like easy Denver targets that now are taken away from them because of the limitations. So I do find it very curious. How are you going to hit on the margins of two-way guys that eventually get converted into minimum guys right here and now, and who are you going to sell on that vision of just, hey, I know this might not be the ballpark financially that you want to be in right now, but guess what? You take a slight pay dip for like the minimum or whatever, or the MLE or whatever it is, and you win a championship with Giannis, and I mean with Jokic, and then away you go. But Gavin, let's also play our buy or sell. And this buy or sell is one that I think that you'll have a lot of opinions on. Buy or sell, the Eastern Conference is wide open, as we all claim.
I buy it with the caveat that I don't think it's as open as some people portray it as, which is like, all right, wow, any of these 8 teams can win the East. Let me know if you agree with this list. I think the teams that could win the East, and I have them roughly in order, are the Cavs, the Knicks, the Magic, the Celtics, and the Pacers, and that is my cutoff point. Is there a team I didn't list there that you think could feasibly win the East?
I think that your list might be even a little generous, which is to your point of just, it's not as wide open in terms of going to the finals as people make it out to be. Is it as wide open as people make it out to be in terms of having a fun regular season? I think it is. I think that you can have a grand old time if you're some of these teams that the door is not completely shut on. But to your point, I would have to agree with you that actually winning it, could you throw Milwaukee in there because they have what I would consider the best player in the East? Maybe. That kind of feels like a stretch. I know Atlanta feels really good about them, and I think that Atlanta's the exact example. Is it wide open for Atlanta to now feel like, okay, we're in it, whether it's right or wrong, but like, can Locked On Hawks and Locked On Hawks listeners feel like they're in it? Yes. And that's where it is wide open, and that's where I buy it, because on the flip side of that, in the West, I mean, hope springs eternal, and in this case in the NBA, summer springs eternal. But can the Memphis Grizzlies really believe that they can win the West? No. They can believe that they can have a fun season, but they can't believe that they can win the West. Can the Kings believe that they can win the West? No. Like there's just more teams in the West that can believe that they have zero shot versus having a fun season, which is like the Hawks. Whether you think that they're crazy or not, they truly believe that they have a chance, and that's where it is more wide open.
Yeah, I think for Atlanta, you would need just the healthiest season ever from Kristaps Porzingis. Yeah. Given where we last saw him, that seems unlikely. And then the young wings are just not in any meaningful way battle tested. Like maybe there's a world where, I mean, we hear teams calling on Jaylen Brown. Do you turn 2 of those 3 guys plus some of the incredible picks you have coming your way into someone like Jaylen Brown? Does that change the conversation. I don't think Boston wants to trade him. I don't think Atlanta wants to give up on those guys. So I think the Hawks are your way. I think the Pistons, out of any team I didn't mention, probably have the best case. And if Detroit fans are watching and they're like, hey, come on, we're ahead of the Celtics and Pacers without their best players, like, sure, I have the Celtics and Pacers in there. In the world of modern medicine where those guys got the surgery a day later, maybe there's a world where Halliburton comes back. Maybe there's a world where Tatum comes back. Something close to 100%. I don't want to totally discount the heart of a champion, which even though the Pacers didn't ultimately win it, I would say both those teams have. I think those top three are the clearest ones, and I think the Knicks and Cavs are probably in a tier of their own. And yet I don't think either the Knicks, who don't have a coach yet, and the Cavs, who've never gotten out of the second round, Ryland, have done enough to definitively prove that like you should slam the door shut on this conversation. In Detroit, top 10 offense, top 10 defense over the final 50 games of the year. They could rightfully make a case. I still think they're a little bit too young. And three of their top five scorers from the postseason last year are free agents. So we have to see how they kind of restructure things.
Yeah, and I think that summarizes it perfectly of just there is no, if you're going to do a tier list of like S tier would be the number one with a bullet, they're going to win the conference. I'd bet money on it. There's not one team sitting there in the East. Whereas in the West, if you were a gambling man, you would gamble again that the Thunder are going to win the West. And there's other teams that have a chance, certainly, but they're the team that everybody's gunning for. There's not an exact team in the East that everybody's gunning for to where that makes it feel way more wide open, even though with the exercise that you've done, maybe not quite as wide open as you once would believe. Now, buy or sell that the Cavs getting Lonzo Ball today was a brilliant move.
Brilliant feels like it's doing a lot of work, but you know what? I'm going to say yes, just because I am nothing against the guy. Seems like a great dude. I'm not an Isaac Okoro fan. He has never really shown me anything in the playoffs. I still have memories of the Knicks 2 years ago. Every time he came in, like Tom Thibodeau just saying, awesome. We are not guarding that guy. And like Zach Lowe, I think highlighted it brilliantly on his podcast where he was saying, like, every year, better regular season, you see flashes like, all right, maybe this dude can play in the playoffs. And just kind of doesn't really happen. So I think in that sense, it's low risk. It's higher risk in the sense that this is signaling, but I assume this would be the case anyways, that Ty Jerome is going to come back, who obviously did not have a great second round for them, but was fantastic in the regular season. Lonzo Ball, was not, which is to be expected after missing 3 or 2.5 seasons of NBA basketball, was not really the same guy as when we last saw him, when he was arguably the central piece on a Bulls team that was the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference along with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. He was 7.5 points a game, 3.5 assists, 3.5 rebounds. The shooting was the biggest thing that I think is going to take some time to come back. 37% from the field, 34% from three, pretty much only shot threes. 5.6 of his 6.9 shots per game were from distance. I just think he is a brilliant passer. He's one of the best passers to come into the NBA over the last 10 years. Obviously, if he lacks burst, it is harder to access that passing. But I just think he fits in just wonderfully with their offensive ethos. He fits in wonderfully with what just Kenny Atkinson is designed from a cultural perspective. If he is just a little bit more explosive, more comfortable in that knee, he was a very good defender when he was healthy, and just a brilliant basketball player who gives them a little bit more size at the point guard spot next to Donovan Mitchell if there's a series where things are just not really working with Darius Garland next to him.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell it being brilliant, and I purposely put that word in there to make this a little bit more fun. Yeah. Is it a good move? I think it's a really good move. I think that if nothing else, you traded someone who you knew was not a very good option for you to reach your ultimate goal for someone who's at least a mystery box of if you add his size and his defense to this backcourt, it gives you and Kenny Atkinson, it gives you more ways, like we talked about in segment 1, looking at a title team. It gives you more ways to mix and match a lineup that can avoid one of your weaknesses. So in that sense, it's a good move. I think that perhaps today, from dunking on Chicago from a lot of corners of the internet, we got too caught up in dunking on Chicago. We got too caught up in hey, it's a transaction. We're just itching for more transactions right now in this NBA calendar, where we went overboard on how great of a move it was for Cleveland, but it's still a good move. And I still like it. So I'm going to sell that it's brilliant and masterful. I'm still going to say Cleveland, it's a really good move. So do not come for us. You can go check out Locked On Cavs to see what Danny Cunningham has to say. Last one, buy or sell after trading for Kevin Durant and keeping their powder dry for future moves. The Houston Rockets are the bona fide number 2 in the West that have the chance to beat OKC.
Ryland, I see what you're doing. We were dubbed Cavs haters. We were dubbed Rockets haters. We felt justified in that after the playoffs. Now you're trying to flip it on me. You're trying to make amends with those fan bases. And I'm gonna take that step and hold up the peace treaty and say that I buy it with the caveat that, like, you tell me there's a fully healthy Nuggets team in a series against the Rockets, I would probably just trust Nikola Jokic to go out and win that series. But Houston, much like Oklahoma City, just still has so many avenues to continue to get better. The starting lineup on paper of Fred VanVleet, Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr., Kevin Durant, Alperen Şengün is just awesome. You trade away in Jalen Green, like one of the least efficient high volume scorers in the NBA. I pulled the stat for you, Ryland. Out of 52 players who took at least 15 shots per game last year, Jalen Green was 47th in effective field goal percentage. Kevin Durant was 4th. So I think that alone just, and obviously just a better score, like a higher volume scorer to boot. Like even if he declined slightly from where he was at last year, still a brilliant basketball player, still a brilliant shooter. You have guys in Tari Eason and Reed Shepherd that are going to continue to get better. They found something with the double big lineups of Şengün and Steven Adams, where those were the best two-man units in the NBA down the stretch last year. And again, plenty of ammunition if they want to add one more piece. I think they do need like one more wing off the bench, ideally. They're just in an incredible position right now.
I'm going to buy this as well because if you look at last year's Rockets team, they did give the Thunder some trouble. Now, was it overblown by Jackson Gallen of Locked On Rockets? Yes. They did give him some trouble. And Şengün, and again, no disrespect to Jokic, I'm not even saying he's in the same stratosphere as Jokic, but as an archetype of what they do on the court, the archetype of Şengün in the middle of the floor, playmaking, able to score around the rim, that has tripped up OKC at times of just their style of play. The way that they swarm in the paint, the way that they construct their defense, that has given the Thunder some trouble. The double big stuff with Adams was legit. And the one thing you could knock on them perpetually was, how are they going to score? Can you because it felt impossible, and it ended up being impossible to get 4 games of Fred VanVleet scoring 38 points, which is how they beat OKC once in the regular season. Was just, hey, Fred VanVleet was awesome. He scored 38, and this Rockets defense is no question legit, and they won the game. And now you do have a guy who you should be able to structure this regular season in a way that gets KD to the end, good to go for the playoffs, because I think that they've proven to you, if nothing else, that they're a great regular season roster, and that they're a great roster that can rack up regular season wins and get you where you need to be come April. At that point is when you need Kevin Durant, and at that point is when Kevin Durant can inject himself into this team and be their bona fide bucket getter. On top of, like you mentioned, you've got to buy it because this is just the beginning of the transactional window. We don't know what they're going to do in February. This has not been a scared front office that is afraid to improve their team. So from all those aspects, you have to say that right now that they have the best chance at topping OKC, with Denver being a very, very, very close second to Houston because they have Jokic, who's a matchup nightmare in and of himself. And you imagine that the next time that these two teams play in the playoffs, Denver can't possibly have the injury concerns that they had this year. Mm-hmm. So I think that those two teams are the teams to watch, especially if we've already talked about Denver making moves on the margins. Go check out Locked On for every single team we've discussed, including Locked On Knicks. Gavin, Schall, I'm Ryland Stiles. Until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.